Well, here's the thing. I don't use social media. So it turns out smartphones aren't that interesting if you don't have any social media apps on it.
Yeah, what's that like?
So there's nothing, if you have nothing that is engineered to try to grab your attention, the smartphone actually goes back to 2007 Steve Jobs' keynote address smartphone, which is, this is a really nice phone. And your music, you can listen to things on it, and the phone interface is really good. And look, there's a Maps app, and you can look at maps on it. It's actually a useful piece of technology that you're happy to have, but you don't use it that much.
What about text messaging? Do you text message? And if so, do you get into conversations by text, or is it more of a plan and meet type tool?
I try. Right. So I try. I do use text messaging. I mean, this is how my wife gets in touch with me. But I'm notorious somewhat among my friends of the ability to capture my attention with text message is really hit or miss, because I'll go hours without looking at my phone. So it's not this default appendage. I think for a lot of people, if you know someone, you can basically assume, look, if I text them, they're going to get right back to me. My problem is I'll go 2, 3, 4 hours, without looking at my phone. And then there'll be text messages on there from conversations that people were trying to start. And I typically just have to declare text bankruptcy a few times a day. Look, if they really needed me, I guess they would have called. So I do text, but I'm not considered to be very good at it.
A few other questions about your phone practices.
This makes me nervous.
Is your phone in a drawer or on the desktop while you're working? Is it face down, face up? Is the ringer on? Is it off?
Oh, you mean if I'm writing or what? It's nowhere near me. Yeah. I mean, it could be anywhere. It's just not going to be anywhere near me. So I have in my house 2 different offices, basically, right? So there's a home office. The printer's there. The filing cabinets are there, the nice big monitors there, pay taxes, that type of thing. Then I have a library, and there's no permanent technology in the library. No computer in there, no monitor, no printers, nothing like this. I have this sort of custom-built desk I had made by a company from Maine that makes desks for college libraries. That's what they do. So I had this custom-fit desk to fit into, it's not that big of a space. That's where I go to write. I'm surrounded by books that I've really carefully curated what's where, each shelf, what type of book it has on it, so I can look different ways for different inspirations. I got a fireplace, so I can just turn on a fire if I need it. I'll bring my laptop in there to write if I'm going to write on a computer, and my phone doesn't come in there. Yeah, you don't look at a phone in that room, and it just helps me. It's a ritual, right? If I'm in there, I'm thinking, I'm creating with the sort of same patterns of cogitation that we would have been using for hundreds of years when people have been thinking professionally. If I want to be near a printer and I want to go on to a web browser and pay my taxes or whatever, I have a different place for that.
Curious about the fireplace. I have this theory based on my understanding of visual neuroscience and the fact that when we're looking at visual scenes that have some degree of predictability to them, we get into a mode of anticipation. Our thinking is at least somewhat linear and so forth. When we are looking at, say, ocean waves or in a skyscraper, we're staring down at the street of, say, New York City, and the cars are moving in obviously not random fashion, but at least to our visual perception, pseudo-random. You're not tracking any one thing. That the mind goes into this sort of state where our thoughts become nonlinear. They're not anchored to any kind of if-then, kind of what I call DPO, duration path outcome kind of trajectory. There's not a lot of neuroscience on this, but there's a little bit. Same thing happens when you're looking at an aquarium, by the way. I wonder whether or not staring at the fire, which is something that humans have been doing for many, many, many thousands of years, because it has that random aspect to it, does it tend to spark creativity, linear thinking? At what point in your writing do you turn to the fire and stare at it?
That's interesting, actually, that there's a neurological explanation. When I use the fire is actually when I read, right? So I have chairs by the fire, but I think for exactly this reason, right? Because when I'm reading, I'm looking to spark ideas, right? Okay, what's my takeaway from this? What's the connection you're making between this thing you're reading here and this idea over there? That type of connection making is a lot of my brainstorming. And I read by the fire when the weather allows it. I also walk a lot, so I wonder if there's something similar going on. When I'm trying to work through an idea for an article or a math proof or something like this, almost always I'm going to do that on foot. And there might be something similar going on there where you're encountering, it's not entirely exotic stimuli, right? So it's not, oh my God, my attention's being drawn, but it's, you don't quite know what you're going to see. And you also have that circuit quieting effect of the walking. So your motor neurons are going. You can tell me if I'm getting this right or not.
You are. Yeah, absolutely.
The motor neurons are going, and you get some inhibition going on in some of these key networks, which allows you to actually maintain the internal focus on a concept a little bit better. So I do a lot of my original focused ideating on foot, but a lot of my serendipitous ideating will be with the fire going. right? It's where I read by the fire. It's when I read that I get a lot of my original ideas.